Hello and welcome to Radar Radio. This is our eighth podcast now, and today I'm here with, virtually here with James Spence of Rolo Tomassi. How are you doing, James?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, yes, yeah. It's great weather this week so far. I'm also here with my two hosts, Catherine
Hello.
and Joe.
Hello. Hasn't the weather just been good for the whole of lockdown, though? I mean, you could have said that any week.
Well, I've just noticed that I have a t-shirt tan this week, so the weather's stuck out more to me this week. But yeah, so obviously every week we chat with musicians and industry people, and try and provide a bit more insight into all the moving parts of the music industry. And this week we have James, who obviously is not only vocalist and keys player in a band, but he's actually also a booking agent for one of the agencies that we work with for Radar Festival. So first of all, James, how are you finding lockdown?
It's been fine, I think, is the short answer. I've been trying to keep myself busy. We're working on new music, so that's been something I've been able to put a lot of energy into. And I think right now it's just a general feel of restlessness, of having so much time to do all the things that I've always wanted to have the time to do, but not always really wanting to do them now. So it's just finding that balance of trying to be productive, but not putting too much pressure on myself to get things done when I'm maybe not in the right headspace to do them.
Is that music based, or is that something else, industry related?
That's kind of everything. I think that's
Okay.
just generally my life, my day to day.
That's when you say headspace. Obviously, I can imagine with the lack of shows happening at the minute and bookings being able to take place, there obviously must be financial strain from that aspect. But is there strain on the band as well then as a result of that?
I mean, with regards to the band, we had to cancel a few tours and we've rescheduled some shows till next year. But we were very much coming towards the end of touring an album, so it's nothing that's had like a huge financial impact on us. We're quite lucky in that respect. With regards to like bookings and work, like obviously this has completely put the brakes on everything. So been able to do little bits towards rescheduling things, starting to put together things for 2021. But I think we're having to very much judge things on a week by week basis and just see what the updates are, as I'm sure you've had to do with the festival as well. And
Yes.
it's quite difficult to plan, even for next year, early next year, while there's been so few updates on how events are going to start to be rolled back out. I think it's kind of quite clear at this point that it's going to be one of the last things to return. So I'm trying to remain optimistic and just trying to keep busy. And certainly with regards to Rolo, we've been able to use the time to write. But again, when I talk about being in the right headspace to do that. I don't want to write music every day. I'm not always in the right frame of mind to do that. I'm not someone that can kind of just sit down and churn it out. I kind of have to have the balance of everything there in my life to be able to do that like properly. Inspiration does sometimes just fall out of thin air, but I think I need to kind of have a balance of a lot of other things that make that happen ultimately, and that's something that I've always been conscious of, but even more so now. Now I've got all this time where I could potentially, looking at it from the start of it, it could have been like, cool, so you've got this indefinite amount of time, just write a record. And while I've definitely gotten things done, I haven't been as productive as I maybe had hoped I would be at the start of it. And I've just kind of learned to not put pressure on myself because, good music takes time, and this will be album 6, and we're certainly not in a hurry to put something out that we're not happy with.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, out of interest, how do you guys write? Obviously, yourself being keys led, are you more Guitar Pro, or do you jam things out, or do you just demo actual tracking?
You know what? It's a balance of all of those things. In the past, I used to be really Guitar Pro focused. I play guitar as well, and I used to write plenty on guitar for Rolo. I've kind of moved more onto just writing for keys now. And during that point, yeah, I would tab step out like for a full band on Guitar Pro. But then there's such a strong element to getting in a room and physicality of performance with us as well. I think you can write something out on Guitar Pro, or you can demo something out using MIDI and Logic or whatever you use, and then when it comes to playing it, if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. And I think there's definitely things we can be doing independently. Like it's Chris Caford, who plays guitar in Rolo, and myself that I guess come up with a lot of the initial ideas that we then structure as a band. But I think for it to really feel like it's a group effort, there needs to be everyone in the room contributing towards that. So I think there's definitely going to be things we can do now, but we'll need time together in a rehearsal space to flesh it out and to bring it to life.
Yeah, that's fair. I've seen a lot of bands work that way, collaborative, especially when they're spread out. Not always able to record, and obviously Guitar Pro has a phone app as well. I actually find writing with Guitar Pro, you tend to use note choices that you wouldn't ordinarily use because you haven't got the guitar in front of you. Does the same kind of, obviously you do play guitar as well, but does the same apply to keys?
Oh, I mean, I'm not the sort of musician that would be able to write without an instrument. I would always write everything sort of organically and then go back and play it into Guitar Pro, or write out into Guitar Pro, or play it into Logic. I kind of have to have that sort of tangible feel of an instrument to make the initial ideas that then become a song.
Right, okay. And obviously you just mentioned that you'd just finished touring your last album, the fifth one, and I noticed, obviously, as I was doing a little bit of research, and noticed that you yourself wanted to step away from, slightly darker sound that you had. And do you think that will kind of carry forward into the next album as well?
Certainly, in terms of what's been written so far, there's like a definite split between what I've written and what Chris has written, and I don't think it wouldn't be hard once I'd pointed it out to someone like, well, this is the stuff that I'm writing sounds like this. It'd be really easy to kind of cleanly split who's done what. So yeah, certainly, like from my contributions so far to new material, I've definitely kind of gone for more sort of melodics, I guess cinematic sounding keys and piano led stuff.
Okay. I mean, does that? Do you think there'll be much change from? Well, maybe not from the last album, but from the second to last album. Then, in that respect.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think with every record that we've done, the sound has always gradually evolved, and that's a lot of the time down to what we're listening to and the kind of music that we like, and how everyone is able to bring their sort of separate influences together to make something. And also, I think we will always assess what we've enjoyed about a previous record when we like listen back to it, and certainly after touring it and sort of gauging how it feels to play certain things live. I think you get a completely different idea of how a record is when you actually go out and tour it for 2 years. Certain songs can feel incredibly different live when you've played them over 100 times. They'll start to mean different things to you. They'll start to feel different, and you get a better idea of where you want to push things. And I certainly feel the bigger melodic moments on Love Will Bury It, the last record, were the ones that I have the sort of the strongest and fondest memories tied to when it comes to the touring side of it.
In terms of Rolo, would you be able to talk us through the history of how the band formed and how you became the band that you are?
So we celebrated our 15th anniversary in February this year. It was a band that was formed when I was in secondary school, and I guess it was a group of people that I was at school with. It was me and my sister, and then the other three original members no longer play in the band anymore. But yeah, we all had sort of started out playing in pop punk bands when we were younger. I guess people were like, listening to, I guess, the kind of classic bands you get into when you're 13, 14, stuff like Green Day and other bits like that. And people's tastes sort of gradually started shifting and started getting into sort of heavier stuff, I guess stuff that was more like hardcore and post-hardcore focused. And we wanted to start a band that was sort of more reflective of what we were listening to at the time. And yeah, the first few years, I guess it was touring in half terms, in school holidays. And then I finished my sixth form education, and we decided that we would, rather than people going to university, which had been a plan, like I had a place at uni, we were going to take a gap year and have a go at it, because we'd kind of built up some momentum but never had a full amount of time to dedicate to touring, or touring extensively. So we did that. During that year, we wrote an album and we got signed. And then the next 10 years of my life happened. We just we toured, recorded, wrote more records, and I guess things just gradually snowballed. The more you do, the more people you meet, the more people you put in front of. And I think through a mixture of hard work and being in the right place at the right time and meeting the right people, we were able to sustain this career. And it wasn't for everyone. And we had member changes. The first few came in 2011, when Chris and then Nathan Fairweather, who plays bass, joined. And then since then we've had a couple of drummer changes. But I guess when you do something for that long, it's really hard to make it work for 5 people, and to expect 5 people to have the same level of commitment and to feel like they're getting what they want out of it. But yeah, I guess that is a very, very brief and concise history of the band. I'm not sure if there was anything more specific you wanted to hear about, but yeah.
I've got a question. So I obviously get it because it's a film I love, but how often do you get asked where your name came from?
Pretty regularly. Still, I think there's been some interesting. I think some people think when they see the name Rolo Tomassi, we've been mistaken for an Italian folk artist before.
Amazing.
I think some people actually think it's just someone's name, and that it's like a solo artist. But yeah, I think a lot of people are either, like you're saying, people either get the reference and know the film, or want to know what it is. There's actually there's an American band that are called Rolo Tomassi as well, but they spell it slightly differently in the film and in the book. And I never realized this until I saw the DVD of the movie, and the name was a title of one of the chapters. It's actually spelt with 2 L's and 1 S, and I accidentally but very wisely, with hindsight, spelt it with 1 L and 2 S's, and which has done us like a world of good with regards to Google and all of that kind of stuff. I just spelt it the way I assumed it would be spelled, and it was it allowed like separation from the American band, which is a good thing.
That's fortunate.
Yeah.
What's it? I'm sure you get asked this quite a lot. What's it like being in a band with your sister?
You know what? It is something that I get. That's probably the one question that I've been asked most of all time. And the truth is, like, I don't know any different. I've played in bands with Eva since I was 13. Like, we were in a band before this, and it's just the most normal, natural thing in the world. I can't really imagine doing it without her, and I wouldn't want to either. Me and Eva are really similar in terms of ages. I guess like she was a year younger than me at school, so we shared a lot of the same friends. We got into a lot of the same things at the same time, and it's just incredibly normal. I don't know any different from it. So it's something that I enjoy doing, and yeah, it's fine. I mean, we, certainly we kind of can argue sometimes, but only in the same way that I would argue with any other bandmate. But it's less and less frequent, so it's a good thing.
Also, you were saying to me when we were chatting the other day about Eva lives in America now. Is that right?
She does, yeah. So we're spread over, as a band, we're spread over 2 countries and 3 different cities. So we have myself, Nathan, and Al, our drummer, live in Brighton. Chris is in London, and Eva moved to New Jersey about a year and a half ago now.
So you're an international band now. How do you guys do in America?
You know what? We've been twice, and it's been absolutely phenomenal both times. Going to America was like an absolute like bucket list dream of mine, and it was something that didn't happen properly until 2017. We'd done South by Southwest a very long time ago, the industry festival, and we recorded an album in Los Angeles in 2009, and we played a one-off show then. But yeah, we did an East Coast tour in 2017, and we did a West Coast tour in 2018, and it was unbelievable. It completely met my expectations, and it felt like there were people that had been waiting there to see us for a really long time that knew the material, and it was just incredibly exciting. And yeah, feel very fortunate to have been able to do it, and looking forward to going back.
And how does it compare to touring the UK?
I mean, I guess very obviously, basically the drives are a lot longer. I guess if you're doing a well routed tour in the UK, you're driving for a maximum of 2 to 3 hours a day. Whereas, there were certain days on that US tour where we would finish the show, load the van, start driving overnight, and we would arrive at the venue at load-in time the next day, having driven all the way through the night. Like, there were some brutal drives on that tour. But it's par for the course. Like, we all knew that going into it, and in a weird way, I almost wanted that as the experience. Like, I knew it was going to be like that, and I wanted to have my own experience of that, even if it was going to be a bit miserable. But it was great. I'm kind of quite happy putting my headphones in and staring out and looking at the landscape, especially if it's something new and somewhere I've not been before. I guess in terms of the rest of it, because that's obviously just a very mundane point to make, I felt that, and maybe it was because I was really excited to be there, but I felt that people in the audiences were really, really excited to come and speak to us, and like really engaging and wanted to talk after the gigs. Maybe that was because we were an international band, and again, because we've been a band for quite a long time and they'd perhaps been waiting to see us. And I'm trying to think of anything else really, but yeah, I mean, the travel element is something that sticks out for sure.
And do you find venues and I guess kind of like the more behind the scenes stuff that you're, I guess, more involved in, do you find that differs at all to over here, rather than not just the crowd response kind of stuff, but do you get help at load in, and is it more, because obviously you guys are, although signed, I personally still feel have quite a DIY element to you, which I think is also one of your biggest appeals.
I mean, I think we've always like tried to maintain like a sense of autonomy in what we do, and I've always kind of taken the attitude that if I can do something myself, I would much rather do that than have someone else, than pay someone else to do it for a start. And again, like, I think this will kind of factor back into work and what some of us do for a living, but a couple of us like do work in music and know how to do a lot of the things that that need to happen on tour. But I guess the level that we were touring at in the US, there wasn't any sort of like stagehands or anything like that. It was very much, we did everything. We were very lucky that both times we were sharing vehicles with bands we were touring with. So there's 2 bands sharing backline and all loading in and out together and taking care of all of that. And because of the the budget restraints, we were touring without a sound engineer, and we didn't have anyone selling merch for us or anything like that. So it was literally just the 5 of us in the band sharing a vehicle with another band, using house engineers, and just like tour managing ourselves, doing all of that kind of stuff ourselves. But again, I think because we do that in the UK and Europe, or do a lot of those things ourselves, didn't feel like a hardship or a compromise to do it. I think we're very used to taking care of as much of the business as we can. So it was no one had a problem kind of, getting their hands dirty and mucking in with that kind of thing.
And I just one last question from me in terms of the writing. Actually, something just popped up was obviously each album has progressed and the next one will do some more. But do you feel even with the subjective take on good music as you put it yourself, do you feel there's a bit of pressure for the next release, given how the reviews and the scores that you gained from the last one? Do you think that's do you feel the pressure in terms of delivering something new?
Yeah, I really do. And I think that's pressure that I'm gonna put on, that's coming. It's internal as much as external. I think things like good reviews are really flattering, and it's really nice when people both in the public and in the press have nice things to say about what you've done. But I think in terms of the standards that we've set for ourselves and how happy I was personally, and we were as a group with the last record, I feel pressure to beat the standard that we've set. And it's good, and it kind of, I think we set a precedent, and it's good to have sort of something to aim for. So it's not pressure that kind of stresses me out. It's pressure that I need, I think.
One of the things we're always interested in talking to people about is obviously the music industry encompasses many different roles within it, and you've established yourself business-wise as being able to earn money working within the music industry as an agent. Would you be able to talk to us about how that started and how you got involved with that, and any advice you'd have for people that were interested in such a path?
So I've worked various jobs in music probably since I was about 19. I'm 31 now, just for context. I actually started putting on gigs locally, I guess when I was about 14. And when I say locally, I mean I'm talking like in the village that I'm from, outside of Sheffield. These gigs were so local that it's you have no idea. It was like in a village hall that we were able to rent. I don't know. I can't even remember how we would have been allowed to do this, being so young. Maybe someone's parent would have been sort of the guarantor for it or whatever. But we would hire a village hall. Someone had a PA, and we would start putting gigs on, because at that point we probably wouldn't have been old enough to get into a lot of smaller venues, and there were enough bands at the school that I went to be able to occasionally put on these sort of little half-day events. So I guess that was a very, very early experience of organizing things and sort of putting something together, which again sort of fed into the early Rolo stuff, I suppose. Certainly of just doing things ourselves, because we wouldn't have been in a position to go and play in bars or anything. The majority of people there would have been under 16. So it was like, well, we can do this ourselves. So this is the only option we have. So this is what we'll do. So from that, I started playing in a band. I moved to Nottingham when I was maybe 18 or 19. And I was working for a venue, the Bodega. I started out as part of their flyering team. And then would start working on the bar there. It's a bar with a venue above it for anyone that's unfamiliar with it. And it's owned by a national promoter called DHP Family. They now have venues in Nottingham, Bristol, and in London, as well as having like a heavy presence promoting shows around the country and in Manchester specifically as well. And I guess at some point, someone that worked in their office in Nottingham knew that I was working on the bar and asked me if I would come in and help with their social media, specifically on a festival that they do called Dot to Dot, which happens once a year in Notts, in Bristol, and in Manchester. So I used to come in when the festival was a couple of months in advance of that for a few days a week, and I would help with just the marketing. But this is at a very, very sort of at a very basic level, just because they knew that I played in a band, I ran the social media for our band, and sort of knew how to do it, and they just needed a spare pair of hands. And eventually, I think after maybe the second or third year of doing that, I was offered to come on full time as part of their marketing team. So I worked for them for a number of years, and through that, I actually started repping shows as well. That's something else alongside booking bands now that I still do. I work for several national promoters as a promoter rep. And I first got the experience of that through working with DHP Family as well. Again, that would have been at Dot to Dot Festival, where they use such a high volume of venues that they just need people to be there and just to act as liaison between the artists and the venues, just to make sure everything's running appropriately. As I'm sure you're all sort of very experienced with doing an event like Radar. And eventually I had moved from Nottingham to London, and again was working in marketing for DHP Family. And then I reached the point where I didn't want to live in London anymore, so I moved to Brighton, so I had to leave that job. And I took a little bit of a break from working in music full time. I was still repping shows occasionally in Brighton for a few different national promoters. And then I would have met Liam, who is Rolo's booking agent. And then he was ready to leave the company that he was working for. He knew that I was kind of taking care of a lot of sort of the admin side of our band, and asked if I'd be interested in going to work with him. I think he knew that I was very much looking after the day-to-day of our stuff. I could tell that I was a bit of a stickler for the detail and the admin stuff. So yeah, a couple of years ago, he asked if I'd go and work with him, and then I've now in the position that I'm at with Atonal, I sort of take care of a lot of the paperwork and all the glamorous spreadsheet stuff, as well as taking care of a few bands myself. I've got like a small-ish roster of maybe 7 or 8 bands. And I guess all of the things I do, have done, continue to do, all feed into each other. It's quite an interesting position to be in. I think obviously being in a band and playing shows, I'd like to think I know what a lot of artists want and expect. And then repping shows, I can kind of able to put that back into it and make sure that people are comfortable and, you know, shows happen in the best way that they can. And then booking things, I know how to route tours, I know like what bands like and dislike. And it's great because I'm constantly able to learn, I'm constantly able to put new experiences that I've had into all of those 3 separate roles, and hopefully sort of get better as I go along with it and learn on the job. Very, very much quite fortunate in that respect, I think.
Do you want to talk about the bands on your roster for a minute? Who you've got? What hopefully they'll be up to next year, if you can talk about it at the moment, etc.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? 1 second. Because I did this the other day and I didn't mention one band, and I felt so guilty about it that I'm just going to get the list up now so I don't do the same thing again. So I actually booked for 10 bands. I was a bit of a guess before. I guess I'll start with the most recent one that I've started working with. It's a band from Bristol called Sugar Horse. And I was put onto them by a friend. They kind of make this really intense, doomy, shoegazy, gothy. Yeah, it's so heavy, but there's a real sort of sense of beauty and melancholy in what they do. And they just put a new EP out. We're going to look to just get them out playing shows. They're Bristol based. They've not really played a great deal outside of Bristol yet. So I guess this will be the earliest I've gotten involved with a band in terms of where they're at in their career. So I think at the moment I just want to make sure that they can get out there and play to as many new people as they can and just get them in front of people at this point. Other bands that I work with, Conjurer would be a big one. They were due to play Radar. They're working on a second record at the minute. I spoke with Brady, who is one of the vocalists and guitarists in that band, and they're working on new material, hoping to put something out next year, I think. There's another band from the US who are one of the bands that we toured with, actually, called Cryptodera, and they're just putting the finishing touches to their second record. I've been lucky enough to hear it, and it's phenomenal. They played Radar the year that we did it, which would have been, last summer. So, yeah, I mean, that's a couple of the artists that I work with. If anyone else is interested in seeing any of the rest of the bands, it's atonal.agency, and you can check the roster out. But, yeah, I mean, I guess the speciality that I kind of do, it's more sort of... Liam does a lot of sort of technical metal artists, I suppose I would kind of put as a bit of a blanket term. And I think mine is more sort of metal and post-metal focused. That's those are very blanket terms, but
you definitely have more of an organic side of...
I think so, yeah. I guess Liam's kind of mainly a lot more sort of instrumental and maybe proggy, I think would be a fair word to put at that. But I think a lot of the bands that I'm working with, I can tell that they've come from really similar backgrounds to Rolo. There's, part of a similar scene that we are part of. And it's really nice. Like, a lot of them, I had existing relationships with them anyway. So a lot of the time it's just an extension of existing friendships. And that's really, really nice. I'm very happy to do that.
Well, assuming none of them can hear, who's your favourite band that you work with?
Cryptodera, absolutely. They're like it. That band is our best friend band. I think we've toured with them 3 times now, and we just get on with them like an absolute house on fire. Like, I've been in contact with Mike, the guitarist, like constantly for the last couple of months. We speak every couple of days over like messages or whatever. We love them to pieces as Rolo.
And what about musically, I guess?
Which of the bands is my favourite musically?
Yeah, obviously, everyone has a broad range in music tastes, but
of course, probably at the moment, Sugar Horse. Like, that's been one of my favourite releases this year. It's very, very sort of in touch with music that I'm into anyway, and kind of very tonally what I like. I guess it's that kind of really, really good combination of stuff just being brutal and also like having such a good sense of melody, and it hits these amazing melodic points that sometimes feel like they come out of nowhere in the midst of all this ugliness. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to getting to see them play. I can imagine it's going to translate amazingly live. But yeah, I've started working with them just on the back of hearing the 2 EPs that they've put out.
So, would you be able to enlighten us on how an up-and-coming band would gain the attention of an agent like yourself, to work with on a national level?
I think, I mean, I do look through most submissions that we get, and a lot of the time, it's the way that it's worked out with certain artists is that I've been recommended them directly by people whose taste that I really trust. I think the best thing that local bands can do is to just go out and just keep playing. If you're as good as you believe you are, and you do the right things locally, and you keep working at what you're doing, that people will hear you. I think, obviously having some form of social media presence is important. It's always good to be able to say, I'll use Sugar Horse as an example. I was recommended them. I'm able to go and find everything out that I need to about the band, sort of get an idea of where they're playing, the bands that they're playing with. how they're kind of presenting themselves, and what their music sounds like. But yeah, I guess just being active, and making good music. Like, obviously that's an incredibly objective thing, but if the music speaks for itself, then I think the rest falls into place.
One of the things that I found, having owned a venue for such a long time, is that one of the most satisfying parts of my work has been seeing a smaller band go from, the local shows that are at mine, which is up to 200-300 cap, and then finding that their trajectory absolutely means that they can't come and play at mine anymore. But I get the satisfaction of watching them step onto that national stage, and then sometimes international stage, and feeling immensely proud of how the bands are doing and where they are actually getting those larger audiences. Are there any trajectories like that have stood out in your work as you've been in the industry for such a long time? Are there any that you sort of, those small bands that you saw in the early days and thought, right, I'm going to watch them?
I mean, do you mean in general or in terms of bands that I work with?
Either. I always find it really interesting to see.
In terms of bands that
shows.
I work with, definitely Conjurer have been like a real success story. I can remember the first time that we played with them as Rolo. We'd put on a show as part of the Great Escape in Brighton, as part of the Alternative Escape, the free side of that. We did a Holy Roll Record showcase at a venue that doesn't exist anymore, actually. And at the very last minute, a band that was supposed to be playing pulled out, and Alex, who runs Holy Raw, had said, "Oh, I've got this new band. They'll come and play it," because it was relatively short notice. So I just kind of trusted his judgment on it, and they came down. And I don't even think I'd had the chance to listen to them. And I can remember their bass player was so late for the show that we had a 4-band bill, and it was going to be really, really tight getting through the lineup in time with regards to the curfew and everything. And they were literally on the stage waiting. We had to open the doors. The rest, 3 members of the band were on the stage waiting for their bass player to turn up. He'd not even been able to make it for the sound check. And this guy runs in from the back, runs through a crowd, and he was wearing a suit because he'd come straight from work. And I was kind of like, who are these amateurs kind of thing. Immediately, I was a bit, as I was kind of running the show, I was a little bit annoyed. I hate people being late. And this guy just runs in, pulls off a suit jacket, and they pretty much went straight into the set, and it was unbelievable. It pinned me to the back of the wall. I think it's one of those things whenever we go out and play festivals, or if we've ever done shows when there's locals on it, I kind of, as soon as something starts, I feel that if everyone in our band is enjoying it, and you stood separately from them, you kind of start looking up to try and catch the eye of someone else, just to be like, oh my God, are you watching this? And I think I actually had to go and find the rest of the members of Rolo to make sure they were in the room watching it. And I was like, wow, this band, this is incredible. How have I not heard of them so far? So immediately being excited about them, and then having the opportunity to work with them, and then getting to see them. I think the UK tour we did for the album last year, which sold out maybe, I think it was 6 of the 8 shows, and getting to watch them play their own headline show in London, sold out, and watching them start and to have exactly the same intensity, but seeing the reaction of the room was exactly what they deserved. It was a real goosebumps moment, hair up on the back of my neck. And then a few months later, they were out supporting another band, and they did a really big show in London, 1,000 cap. And again, just watching them walk out and just absolutely boss it, and just knowing that I think what I'm trying to say is, watching a band play such a small show as the opener, seeing exactly how good they are and knowing that they really deserve that platform, and then watching them go out and be able to do it exactly the same. That Conjurer have always been that good. It's just it's getting people to take notice of it and getting them out in front of the right audiences, and seeing people to start really taking notice of that band and sort of getting an idea of the way that their peers are seeing them and the kind of offers that they get now, that's been amazing for me to watch a band that really, really deserves it to flower like that.
And have there been any bands in your short time as an agent that you regret not signing, the one that got away?
That's a really good question, and there probably is an answer, but we might have to come back to
that. Stepping away from the agent side of it for a bit and back to Rolo, what would you say what are the best gigs you've ever done?
I'll talk about stuff that's happened recently. I mean, obviously 15 years is a really long time, and I feel that's a question that I've answered quite a lot, and I would always usually say the same shows. So I wanted to maybe come at it from a slightly different perspective of the best recent ones. I think the most recent album we put out definitely felt like it really elevated everything that we were doing. And especially in terms of the reactions we were getting live, there were a couple of shows on the release tour for that record that were just unbelievable. And it really, really felt like we'd kind of leveled up as a band. And there were two in particular that really, really stood out on that tour. We played a show in Berlin, a venue called Music and Fremden, and we played there so many times over the years as a supporter, as a headliner. I want to say this was probably the 8th time we played at that room, and we played it so many times and it was less than half full, and it was sold out. We've got quite a lot of friends that live in Berlin, like people that have moved over from the UK, and a bunch of our friends actually flew out for it as well to catch it with our other friends. And because I think it was on a Saturday, and like Berlin's a really, really fun place to go. And it was a lot of people that actually used to tour with us back in the day before they got proper jobs and couldn't commit to that anymore. So knowing that we were playing this amazing show and we were surrounded by like some of our absolute closest friends, and it was just absolutely perfect. Everything about it. So that was the moment of that tour particularly where I really kind of started taking stock of how things were set up and how things had been going. Because like, as you mentioned earlier, like we got some really, really nice reviews on that record, and obviously that's great. But actually being able to see that in a room is a very, very different thing. And at that point, it was like, wow, like people really, really like this. So that was really, really special, and that was like a really good moment in that tour. And then that tour finished in the UK and sort of hit its peak. We did a gig at the Garage in London, again, which was sold out. We were really, really happy about, and it just felt like this, I don't know, just like a triumph. I know that's a really sort of pompous word to use for it, but we were on stage playing, and just the reaction that everything was getting, it really felt like the album had just hit people differently. And I could kind of see that, and I spent quite a lot of the show really trying not to cry because I was like so emotionally overwhelmed by all of it. Like we'd been on tour for like 3 weeks and it had been incredible. And then we play this gig, and I think you always put so much pressure on gigs in the capital, and a lot of the time they don't really meet your expectations. But it was like walking through a dream, this gig. We played an absolute blinder. And I'll add as well, actually, to that tour in general. So the drummer that played on the album, he quit the band, I think, a week before it came out. So we had to pull in Al, who's been drumming for us for 2 years now. And he learned like an hour's worth of material in a weekend and then came on tour with us for a month. And it could have gone so wrong. And it could have been one of those things where we were set up to fail. But he helped us bring it to life, and like so much. And sort of being able to turn around and it'd be the end of the tour, and knowing that he was so confident in what he was doing, and sort of seeing the journey that like he'd come on as well, and how he'd kind of just saved it for us, was something that really, really sticks out in my head. And that's something else that makes, I'm really looking forward to writing new material with Al, because he didn't play on the studio recording of the album, and he's done such a brilliant job in conveying how it is live, that I think giving him the chance to kind of put his own chops on a record is going to be really, really fun.
Well, yeah. How did Arctangent go for you?
Trying to remember, we've played it so many times that trying to separate out which year is which is tricky at points. I think we've played it every other year. We played it the first year it happened. How many years has it been going for now? Is it 7 or 8?
I
think 8.
I'm trying to think actually. When was I don't know when the first year was. I thought it was 2014.
I think I've got a feeling it's 2012 or 2013. But anyway, we've played it about 4 or 5 times, I think is the quick fix on what I'm trying to say. The last time we played it, it was okay. I think we went out and we tried to play a set that was just new material, and that was a bit of a mistake. We've had better. It was still good, but I think we've had better experiences of playing the festival. I think the one that sticks in my head has been really, really good would have been 2015. We were on tour with the Fall of Troy. We'd just put out Grievances, and it was just a really, really good weekend. Like, it was in the middle of that tour, and that tour was really, really great. I at least remember that the weather was good last time we were at Arctangent, and I know that's a bit of a rarity for them. So I'll shout that out at least. Yeah, obviously we're disappointed that they weren't able to go ahead this year, because we planned to do the 2 albums in full. And that was something that we'd already started working on. Like, we were going to do Grievances with a string section for the middle songs that have the strings on them. So yeah, that's a real shame, because that would have been a really fun and nice way to kind of cap off the touring for Level Barrier as well, playing that in full.
Do you think that will happen next year?
I'm not sure yet, to be honest. We haven't reached a point where we've had to make a decision on that, and I think depending on where we're at with new material will impact the judgment call that we make on that. I'm not really sure how I feel about bands playing albums in full, and I think because we're at this point in our career now where every year there's some kind of anniversary for us, that I feel it would be really easy to just get pulled into sort of doing these legacy sets and it not be focused on new material. And I just really want to avoid that. Like, I still feel like we've got heaps to offer as a band, and heaps to offer in terms of going forwards. And this year it would have been great, because it would have been like, well, we'll just draw the line under the album. We finish the album cycle by playing it in full. But I guess if we delay that anymore, it kind of runs the risk of just being a bit conceited. I'm not really sure. I think maybe I'm thinking about it too much, but we'll see. We haven't had the conversation yet, is the truth.
And just going back to you as a player, what gear do you use both live and in the studio?
So at the moment, I've actually just upgraded one of my keyboards. I'm using a Nord Electro 6 with the hammer action keys. That's the vital detail. I was using an Electro 4 before, but it only had semi-weighted. And I like to play piano. I like a lot of pianists, and I wanted something that had more of a realistic feel. So I've gone with hammer action. The piano engine on it's a lot better as well, and you can do things like split the keyboard, play multiple patches on top of each other, and that's quite cool. And I use a Roland Gaia as well. That's kind of more for sort of pad sounds, and I guess just more general synth leads and that kind of thing. I use pianos whenever we record. Last year I have an upright piano in a studio space that we have. That's been really, really fun, really, really nice to go and play. Historically, I've an analog synthesizer that I don't think I used it on Level Barrier, but it's part of my equipment, and if ever I need it, it's there. And yeah, I used to use a lot of pedals as well, but I tried to sort of slim down the amount of equipment I had on stage, because I guess the less you have, the less that can go wrong. And fortunately, a lot of the inbuilt effects on the two keyboards that I use are very good anyway.
So you don't, you don't do any like MIDI controlled stuff through the laptop.
No, not live. I've always been really reluctant to have a laptop on stage with me. It's just I've just seen stuff just go so horribly wrong. I think because we only recently started, so Al plays to a click, and we have like a triggered light show that we run through Ableton, and even with that, I was really reluctant to do that initially. I was just really worried it would spoil the sort of organic feel of the show. But I was kind of really quickly disproved on that. I think the consistency of our performances has only been improved drastically since we introduced that, and I've kind of very much come around to it being a good thing. And touch wood, we've never had any problems with it either.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the broad spectrum of genres that your music falls into, I think the click serves more as a guide, and there should be give and take. Ultimately, it helps you, but there should be a bit of give and take, depending on the vibe of the show, and just to account for any technical issues that might come up. But interesting to hear that you don't you don't trigger any patch changes or anything like that.
No, I do it all live, which I think if anyone that's seen us play before, I'm not often just playing the keyboards, I'm playing the controls on it as well, just to try and get the patch changes done in time. And I'm sure there's probably a better way to do that. And I know that Chris and Nathan have both recently started using Kempers, and they're looking at sort of MIDI control pedal changes for that. And I know that it is possible with the gear that I use, and maybe that's something I'll look at later down the line. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of time on our hands, so we can kind of start exploring what's possible with that now. But yeah, there's so, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
One of the things that we've really enjoyed asking our guests is what sort of music or any bands that they've been listening to they'd recommend to listeners. And with you being an agent, that seems like a very pertinent question. So what's been keeping you going through lockdown?
I've been trying to listen to a lot of different stuff. I think I do anyway. I'm particularly enjoying, I've really liked the 3 singles that Phoebe Bridgers has put out. I'm really looking forward to her new album. She's a really, really great lyricist, and it's kind of nice and quite summery sounding, I think. I listen to a lot of soundtrack musicians and artists as well. Colin Stetson is someone that I've gotten into recently. He did the soundtrack for Hereditary, which admittedly is a film I've not seen. I'm not particularly into horror, but I do like a lot of the soundtracks that accompany it. So I kind of know a lot of these horror soundtracks without ever having seen the movies. But yeah, he's really, really... His compositions are amazing. Very, very dark sounding, but also kind of these huge melodic bits in there. And he plays in the kind of like techie metal band actually as well called XI, who did an album on Relapse with the drummer from the band Liturgy. And I guess that's probably more in the wheelhouse of kind of Radar. Like they would definitely be a great fit on your festival. As well, another soundtrack I went back to was Johnny Greenwood, his soundtrack for Phantom Thread, the Paul Thomas Anderson film. I listened to a podcast with him recently when he was talking about the composition for that, and I really, really like that movie. And I went back and the soundtrack for it is absolutely beautiful. It's very piano led, and I've actually spent a little bit of time learning some of that as well. Yeah, there are 3 things that I've listened to recently.
And just going back to that question I asked earlier about the band that got away, in terms of a band that you'd like to work with that you might have missed the opportunity to, has that come back to you at all?
It hasn't, I'm afraid. I've been trying to think, and I've had a pen in my hand just getting ready to write it down in case it did jump out at me. But no, fortunately, there's not been anything yet. Ask me next year.
Well, I think that's about all we've got time for. So thank you very much for your time today, James.
It's been a pleasure, and I hope there's been something interesting in here for people to listen to. Thanks for having me. And
That's
yeah,
okay.
we look forward to the next radar when it happens.
Yes, yeah, we'll stay in touch. And yeah, that's goodbye from myself, and goodbye from Catherine,
Goodbye.
and goodbye from Joe.
Yeah, cheers. See you later.
Bye.